Welcome back, photographers, to another Lightroom Classic color grading video. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can create this deep Moody style color grading effect in your photos just using Lightroom. Now, I recently did a photo shoot in the woods and I really wanted to create a bit more of a moodier tone, as you can see by some of these photos. So if you like this effect and want to add it to your photos, then this is the video for you. And I'm going to start right now. Right guys, to get started with this tutorial, all we need to do is go ahead and choose a photo. Now, some of the photos that I've already edited, but firstly I'm going to go over to photo 1 here, go over from my library over to the develop panel. Now once we've done that, we're going to go down to the basics panel. So we're going to change white balance and exposure first. So we go to white balance, we go to our temperature and tint slider here. I want to go from 6100, I'm going to go to 6750 or 6750. That's going to be our temperature value for today. Now, obviously I'm shooting in RAW, so I've got my Kelvin values enabled. But if you're only shooting in JPEG, all you need to do to kind of have the same warmth as me is just simply add in +10. That should be the same in JPEG as in RAW. But what we're going to do is leave the tint alone, and we may need to adjust that later on if needed. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and change our exposure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my exposure here. I'm going to bring that up ever so slightly, so I think around about +4. And then I'll go to my contrast here. I'm going to add in around about +20, as you can see. So adding a little bit more contrast to the highlights and shadows there. Now, the shadows are quite bright in this photo. So what I'm going to do is actually bring the highlights down to around about -40. And then what we really want to do is make more of a matty effect in the shadows. So we really want to bring up the information in the shadows. So I'm going to go to my shadows here. I'm going to bring that up quite a dramatic effect. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up to around about, I would say around about 80, I think works for this photo. Now we really want to bring down the brightness of those whites. So what I'm going to do is drop that down by -50. And then with the blacks there, I don't want to look them too matty because they are quite in the moment. I'm just going to drop that down by -10. You can see with the histogram, we've got a little bit more information in the blacks, which is really important for our next step. So whilst we've done that, we're going to leave texture alone. We're going to go to clarity here, and what we'll do is I'm going to increase that by 15. And then lastly, we've got our dehaze here. We'll increase that by 20. Now, this is a very saturated photo. Because we've increased contrast and we've kind of added more information in the highlights and shadows, we've brought a lot more of that color. So we want to actually reduce the amount of color in this photo. So the best way to do that is go to our vibrance and saturation sliders. I'm going to go for -10 in vibrance. I'm going to go a little bit stronger in saturation. We'll go for -20. That'll take out some of the color, but not completely. We'll adjust it further when we go ahead and color grade this video using the color mixer tool as well as the color grading panel. Okay, so basically once we've done that, we can drop out of here. And the next one we're going to do is we're going to go over into the tone curve. And the main one we're going to be affecting, we're going to go into our main point curve here to change our overall exposure. So what you want to do is to create almost like a C curve, so a very soft curve, so it drops down the information in the highlights and shadows and kind of creates more matty effect in the black areas. So what I recommend doing to do this, simply raising up the blacks until you're happy with the overall matte. So I think I'm going to go for a 0% input, which is pure black, and the output of that, I'm going to increase that to +35 there. But then what I want to do is add in more contrast by bringing down the blacks. So we'll go for a C curve like so. And then I might bring down the mid-tones a bit further. Go for something like so. And then maybe raise up or darken the highlights there. So we're going for a very soft, almost looks like a Nike tick till the black here. So we're darkening most of the photo, and then at the very end, we're actually brightening the blacks there. So we'll go ahead for an effect that looks similar to this. I guess it looks like a Nike tick, or I call it a C curve because it almost creates like a little C curve that you can see there. Okay, so once we've done that, all we need to do is go ahead and turn that off. And then what we'll do is go over to our color mixer tool. Now, color mixer is split into 3. You've got your hue, which is the type of color, saturation, which is the amount of color or the intensity of that color, and then we've got luminance, which is the brightness of that color, and it's split into 8 color bands. What we're going to do is we'll target each color band independently and then adjust the hue, saturation, and luminance as well. So what we're going to do is go over to our hue first. Oh, another way you could do it is if you go to your adjust panel, you can actually adjust the individual colors as well, hue, saturation, luminance, but personally I prefer working in HSL, changing the hue first, then saturation, then luminance, but it depends on how you guys like working. So what what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the red and orange alone because that's predominantly found in the skin tones, and we don't want to adjust them because we don't want the skin tones to look a bit odd or off, so we're going to leave those particular sliders alone in our hue. So we're going to go to our yellow slider here, and what we're going to do is we're going to drop that down by -50. Then we're going to go to the greens here. We'll make the largest change of the day. We're going to drop that down by -80. What this will do is it will remove a lot of those greens, and it will introduce more oranges, more orange tones, more darker, more warmed colours. That creates that moody look that we're trying to find in our end result. And this is the main impact here, the yellow and green that you can see here. Then what I'm going to do is go to my aquas here. This will predominantly change the dress here. I want to make it a little bit more teal, so I'm going to increase that by 10. And then lastly here, we've got blue here. I'm going to increase that by 10 as well. It'll add in a little bit of a darker colour to the dress that you can see here, but it will also impact the sky as well. So if you've got the sky or any blue dresses involved, it will adjust those colours accordingly. Okay, so basically that's all we need to do in hue. What we're going to do is go over to saturation. What we're going to do is firstly leave the reds alone. We're going to go to our oranges here, and we're going to go for +20. Then with our yellows and greens, we're actually going to reduce those down by -20. And then next for green here, we're also going to do that -20. Then for aquas and blues, we're actually going to drop that down even further by -40. And then blues here also by -40. We're actually going to leave purple and magenta saturation alone. And then lastly, we're going to go over to luminance. We're going to do a very similar. We're going to go to our orange here. We're going to actually brighten that up slightly by +20. Then we're going to go to yellow here. We're going to do -20 for yellow. We're going to go for green here. We're going to drop that down by -20. Aquas here, we're also going to drop that down by -20. And also blues will also drop that down by -20. We can see that's actually made quite a dramatic impact. What we can do is just target what the HSL slider's actually done. Just go into this little eye symbol here, and what we could do is press before and after. If we go ahead and zoom in, we can see before and after. And we can see we've removed a lot of those greens and yellows and replaced them with a slightly darker colour by firstly changing the colour, desaturating that colour, and then actually dropping the luminance of that colour. And we've ended up with a really nice effect. But we're not finished. We've still got a few more things to do. Okay, so what we're going to do is turn off Color Mixer tool. Next, we're going to go to color grading. And what we're going to do in this, we're going to target the shadow tones, and then we're going to target the highlight tones. So we're going to go to our shadows first, and we can see we've got our color wheel here. I prefer working with our hue slider here, but you can use the color wheel if you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have to slide that around. I'm going to go for a number of 20. That's 20 degrees. Then we're going to go to our saturation, which is the amount of colour we're going to add in. And I like adding in a very subtle effect, so I'm going to go in for 10 there. And then what I'm going to do is go to our highlights here. I'm going to do a very similar. I'm going to go for a 25 degree colour, which is a little bit more of an orange colour than our shadows. And then again, I'm going to add in a slight amount, so I'm going to go ahead and add in 10 there. So all we've done is we've added a slight colour to the shadows and a slight colour to the highlights. Okay, so we're going to drop out of colour grading and we'll go to details. Now in details, all we're going to do, add in a little bit of noise reduction. That's it, we're not going to be doing much. So all I'm going to do is go to my manual noise reduction here. I'm simply going to go add in a 25% effect there. That will just remove a little bit of ISO grain, although to be honest, I was shooting at ISO 100. I shouldn't have much grain involved. If you do have more grain in your photo, then you may need to adjust these sliders a little bit more. But personally, just a small amount of noise reduction in all of my presets seems to work really well. So that's all I'm going to do in this video. So turn off the details panel, go to lens correction, making sure that you've got remove chromatic aberration turned on, as well as enabled profile corrections. You can see that a lens that I was reviewing or will be coming out very shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And lastly, what I'm going to do is go all the way down to calibration here. And then I've got my green and blue primaries. What I'm going to do in here, I'm going to go for -10 in the hue green primary. And then for the blue hue primary, I'm also going to drop that down by -10. And as you can see, I am really happy with this effect. But if you really want to make your photos stand out, there's 2 more effects that I would do. Presets done, so if you're happy, you can finish the video. But if you really want to know how to make your photos stand out, we're going to be doing 2 things. So first thing, drop out of calibration. We're going to go over to effects. What I like doing, because our model is central to the frame, we really want to highlight the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my post-cropping vignette. I'm going to go ahead and add in -20 and add in a vignette to this photo. Now, obviously, this vignette is quite strong, so what I recommend doing is going to our feather slider here and go ahead and just increasing that to 100. What it will do is it will fellow out our vignette and add a little bit more of a subtle look. So it's not as strong and it creates a little bit more of a subtle effect, which I think is really important when adding in a vignette. You don't want it to look noticeable. You want it to add to the photo without looking noticeable, if that makes sense. So that's one thing firstly I would do. The next thing, what I want to do is actually highlight the model. And the best way to do that is masking. So what I'm gonna do is go to our masking panel here. Now, obviously it hasn't selected the model. It can't see the model, which is a little bit annoying. So what I'm gonna do is simply go ahead and click subject. And what it'll do is AI will work out, and it's done a pretty good job. This is the area that we're selecting. So it says, as you can see, it's selected the dress really nicely. All I'm gonna do for this is go to our exposure here. I'm gonna bring that up ever so slightly. I think 0.35 of a stop seems to work. And as you can see, now the model really does pop from the photo. Another thing you can do, which I'm gonna do, is I'm gonna go ahead and create a new mask. So I'm gonna go ahead down to linear gradient. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a gradient from the bottom of this photo. We'll go for something like this for the moment. I'm gonna go to my exposure here. I'll go ahead and darken that down. So what it will do is it will just bring more impact to the overall kind of north or upper part of our photo here. So I might go for minus 0.75 stops. And the last thing you do, we've got a little bit of kind of sun peeking through, or a little bit of sky peeking through this kind of wooded area. What we can do is actually add to that by going again to our masks here. I'm actually gonna go to a radial gradient this time, add in a decent sized radial gradient, just pop it in the corner here. So that's roughly where the sun would go. You can see how the kind of shadows are falling within the frame. And then what I'm gonna do is go to my exposure here. I'm gonna go ahead and bring that up. And I might bring that up by the same amount as our model, 0.35. And what I might do is I might just adjust it so it's actually covering the model's face just slightly, adding a little bit more of a subtle effect. And there we go. So we've created 3 masks and made this photo really pop. So what I can do is show you the before and show you the after. And I absolutely love this effect. So yeah, the effect's really good, but if you really want to make your photo stand out, add a vignette and definitely use Lightroom masking. Here is the before and here is the after. Brilliant, and there we go. That is how you can create this beautiful, deep, moody style color grading effect in your photos just using Lightroom. And if you'd like to learn more about Lightroom Classic, make sure to go ahead and subscribe to this channel. I create new videos every single week. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys next time.